Hey folks, tonight we're going full Dark Ages. That's right, forget everything you learned from fairy tales or knight in shining armor movies. This isn't about royal balls or jousts. We're talking about the real Middle Ages, the mud, the misery, the mystery meat pottage. And if you're still here after that intro, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe if this is your niche. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always wild seeing this community stretch across time zones. All right, dim your lights. Maybe start a little background. Hum with your fan and settle in, because you've just woken up in the year 1325. The good news, you're not dead. The bad news, your bed might be. You're lying on a straw mattress that smells like a goat sneezed on it, because plot twist, it used to be in a barn. Your blanket, a slab of wool that hasn't seen soap since last winter. It's basically a biohazard by now. Oh, and don't go reaching for your phone. It doesn't exist. Neither does privacy, or comfort, or indoor plumbing. The church bell rings in the distance. That's your wake-up call, the medieval equivalent of an alarm clock, except louder, colder, and way more judgmental. Time to start your day. You live in a one-room wooden hut. One room. For your entire family, the goats, a few chickens, and every bug west of the Alps. There are no windows, no ventilation, and definitely no scented candles to mask the bouquet of sweat, stale ale, wet straw, and something that might be mold or worse. You stretch and immediately regret it. Your joints crack like you've been buried for centuries. You're 22 years old, which means you're solidly middle-aged. Your back makes noises it shouldn't, and your knees feel like two bags of rocks someone shook too hard. You stand up, and your bare feet hit the floor, which is either damp from the leaky thatched roof or crusty from something the chickens left behind. Either way, it's unpleasant. But that's life. There's no bathroom to sneak off to for peace. Just your entire family rising with you. No curtains, no privacy, just a deeply shared experience. Welcome to your morning. If you're expecting things to get better from here, well, bless your heart, now that your vertical nature calls. And medieval nature. She doesn't whisper. She screams. You head out behind the hut, because that's where your bathroom is, a wooden bucket if you're fancy. Otherwise, a ditch. And if you live in a town, congratulations, you're about to experience the Middle Ages version of a group bathroom. A wooden bench with holes in it. You sit shoulder to shoulder with your fellow citizens, making awkward eye contact while pretending this isn't horrifying. No toilet paper, of course. Just straw. Or leaves. Or moss. Or your sleeve if things get desperate. And then comes the part that separates the medievals from the rest of us. You toss the bucket's contents into the street. That's not a metaphor. That's the actual protocol. Just open a window and yell Gardaloo before tossing it all into the road. Hopefully someone ducks. But honestly, they probably don't. City streets, open sewers. People and animals do their business wherever, and the smell is legendary. Add in rotting food, animal waste, and the occasional dead rat, and you've got yourself a medieval smoothie. In the summer, it gets even worse. Heat plus filth equals something even Febreze couldn't fight. If you're in a castle, you might think it's better. And yes, there's a hole in the wall called a garderobe that drops waste straight into the moat. Practical right. Until enemies figure out it's an entry point. People actually climbed in through these. I wish I were kidding. Some poor guard probably got stabbed by a guy crawling out of the poop chute. Either way, you've survived your medieval bathroom routine. Congrats. You've earned a reward. But it's not what you think. Time for breakfast. Breakfast in 1325 is less meal and more food-shaped object. Forget eggs and bacon. You're getting a ladle of something called pottage. It's been simmering for days, maybe weeks. It's a stew made of grain root vegetables and whatever mystery ingredient showed up in the field or garden yesterday. It's not delicious. It's edible, mostly. You scoop it out with a wooden spoon, praying it didn't ferment overnight or become home to a small rodent. Next to your pottage, a hunk of bread so dense it could be used as a weapon. It's made from rye or barley flour. Wheat's too expensive for you, and it might be bulked up with sawdust or crushed acorns. You don't chew this bread. You negotiate with it. And for drinks, hope you like beer, because the water is filled with everything you just flushed into the street. So instead, you drink weak ale. Low alcohol, high survival rate. Even kids drink it. Morning beer is a thing. It won't get you drunk, but it might help you forget the taste of your breakfast. Want meat? Sorry, that's reserved for feast days, or if you catch something sneaking through your yard. Cheese. Maybe if your cow didn't get sick. Fruit. If it's in season and hasn't rotted yet. And spices. Not unless you're royalty. Pepper is more expensive than gold. Literally. So you choke down your porridge, and beer, chew your medieval brick bread, and pray no one sees you gag. Congratulations. That's the most pleasant part of your day. Now, it's time to work like your life depends on it, because it does. All right, you've eaten your steaming bowl of sadness, chased it with a breakfast beer, and now it's time to get dressed. Not that this is going to improve your day. You own exactly one outfit. Just one. A rough wool tunic if you're a guy, a linen shift if you're a girl, maybe some hand-me-down hose or a second layer if you're lucky, or just extra cold. There's no closet, no wardrobe choices, no such thing as outfit of the day. It's the same thing. Every single day, your clothes. They've been through it. Stained, crusty, and stiff from wear. You wash them once in a blue moon, because washing means hauling water from a stream or a well, boiling it over fire, scrubbing your clothes with ashes or lye, and then hanging them in the sun. Which, spoiler alert, doesn't shine that often. And when it does, it brings flies. There's no soap like we know it today. Just lard mixed with lye or ashes. So your tunic smells like everything you've done in it since last summer. And yes, that includes farming, sweating, and whatever accident happened last week with the goose. Underwear optional. Most people don't bother. It's either a luxury or a hassle, which means you're freeballing it under several layers of hot, scratchy wool. You are chafing before noon. Now let's talk about your shoes, if you even own any. Most peasants go barefoot, through mud, through dung, through medieval booby traps like sharp rocks, broken sticks, or animal bones. If you do have shoes, they're probably made from untreated leather. No soles, no cushioning, no support. Just two floppy sacks tied around your feet with rope. Wearing them feels like walking on regret, and this is the part where the itches start. Because your body, it's a theme park for bugs. Fleas, lice, bed bugs, they're not just visitors. They live here, rent-free, and everyone's got them. Nobles, monks, kids, that weird cousin who lives in the stable, doesn't matter. No one is safe. And no one blinks when you casually scratch your armpit with a wooden spoon mid-conversation. You wake up scratching. You work scratching. You go to bed scratching. Your scalp is raw. Your arms are blotchy. You don't know if it's a rash and infection or just medieval life saying hello. There are no dermatologists, no creams, no. Is this normal Google searches? You just suffer, in silence. Or loudly, if it's particularly bad. If you get a skin infection, pray. Because treatment involves either doing nothing or rubbing it with herbs someone picked near the pig pen. Best case scenario, it goes away on its own. Worst case, it turns into something festering and awful that earns you a nickname like Oozing Thomas. So now, dressed in a tunic that could walk on its own shoes that feel like punishment and skin crawling with invisible passengers, it's time to flash that morning smile and head outside. Except smiling's dangerous, not emotionally dentally. Let's take a look at your teeth. If you're squeamish, maybe skip ahead. There's no toothbrush, no toothpaste, no dental floss, no mouthwash. The concept of oral hygiene is just not there. Some people chew twigs, others rinse with vinegar or wine if they're feeling fancy. But mostly, your mouth is a wasteland. By your mid-20s, your teeth are already a disaster. Yellow, crooked, and full of holes. Cavities are rampant. Gums are swollen. Breath. Not great. If you had a mirror, you'd avoid it. Got a toothache. That's just life now. A low, dull throb that eventually becomes unbearable. So what do? You pull it out. Not you, personally. Usually a barber. Yes, the same guy who cuts hair. He also pulls teeth with iron tools that haven't been cleaned since the last plague. No anesthesia. No numbing gel. Just bite down on a stick and hope the infection doesn't spread. And if it does, you're probably going to die. Yep, a tooth infection can lead to sepsis. All because medieval medicine doesn't understand germs. They think bad smells cause disease. So if your breath stinks, it's both a symptom and a cause. Double threat. There's no such thing as braces, fluoride, or floss. Kissing someone is less about romance and more about sharing bacteria like a medieval gift basket. But don't worry, no one expects your smile to be pretty. What matters is your land, your livestock, and how well you plow a field. Dental aesthetics. Never heard of her. So with your teeth, rotting your skin, itching your stomach barely full, and your body wrapped in medieval misery, you head out to work because you have no choice. Let's talk jobs, unless you're among the lucky 10% who get to do something specialized, like being a blacksmith, a tanner, or a cooper barrel maker. In case you were wondering, you're a peasant, which means you work the land for someone else. The Lord owns everything. You just live on it. Your job's simple. Don't die. You wake up at sunrise. You stop when it gets dark. There is no lunch break, no weekends. The concept of rest is theoretical. You plow fields by hand if you can't afford an ox. You dig trenches. You sow seeds. You pull weeds. You carry water. You haul rocks. You feed animals. You slaughter animals. You clean up after animals. You do this in every season. Rain you work. Snow you work. Heat wave you pass out, wake up, and work again. The tools you use are basic. Wooden handles. Rusty blades. Your bare hands. Your calluses have calluses. Your blisters are regulars. Your back is permanently bent into a lowercase r. Mental health, never heard of it. You're exhausted, depressed, and probably traumatized, but there's no word for that. You just keep going. If you're a woman, the joy multiplies. You do all of the above and raise kids. You cook, clean, spin wool, feed the animals, haul firewood, and try not to cry when your husband brings home lice again. If you're a child, welcome to the workforce. You start around age 5, maybe even earlier. You're handed a rake, a broom, or a chicken and told don't die. No school, no toys, no reading, just work and more work. And if you're lucky enough to have a job in town, like a shoemaker, baker, or brewer, great. You still work sunup to sundown in a tiny workshop that smells like a yeast infection and has zero ventilation. Injury? Too bad. Infection. Drink some warm beer. Broken bone. You're out of commission until you either heal or die. No paid time off. No unions. No OSHA. Just hope your Lord doesn't double your taxes because he felt moody after a bad joust. And this isn't about getting rich. You're not chasing a promotion. You're not hustling. You're surviving. You get a small portion of what you grow. The rest goes to the Lord. The church and taxes. Always taxes. So yeah, you better love dirt. Because in the Middle Ages, you're born in it, you live in it, and eventually you die in it. But at least the weather's nice, right? Wrong. All right, your back is already screaming from digging trenches with tools that would offend even a caveman. Your tunic feels like you're wearing a potato sack soaked in regret. But maybe, just maybe, the weather will be kind today. Spoiler alert, it won't. Let's start with winter. Because if you've ever complained about your heating bill, prepare to feel deeply humbled. Your medieval home has zero insulation. The walls are thin planks, or wattle and daub, basically sticks, and mud glued together with hope. There's no chimney, just a hole in the roof, and a prayer the smoke finds it. Your windows. Nope, just cloth flaps. You might as well invite the wind in for dinner. At night, you bundle up in your one damp tunic, curl into a fetal position, and share body heat with your entire family, the dog and maybe a chicken or two. You wake up with frost in your eyebrows and ice in your water bucket. The floor is frozen. Your toes are numb. Your fingers, useless icicles. Firewood is precious and hard to come by. You can't just go out and collect it. Forests are often owned by the local lord, and picking up wood without permission. That's poaching. And poaching is a crime. Yes, in medieval Europe, you can literally be executed for gathering sticks in the wrong forest. Try explaining that to your freezing children. You keep the fire as low as possible, just enough to not die. If you're lucky, you huddle around hot rocks you warmed earlier in the coals. If not, you just suffer, quietly. Because complaining out loud won't make your socks any less damp. Speaking of socks, good luck finding a pair that match, or even two that are the same thickness. Your feet are constantly wet, either from snow seeping into your boots or from stepping in the bathroom spot on your dirt floor. The smell of mildew and goat dung becomes background noise. Now let's flip the calendar to summer. Sounds like relief, right? Wrong again. Summer turns your wooden box of a home into a medieval air fryer. The sun beats down, but there's no ventilation. No fans. No shade unless you crawl under the pig trough. Your walls trap the heat like an oven made of misery. Your clothes are still made of wool because that's all you've got. Wool in summer. Yes, it's as bad as it sounds. You sweat buckets. Not just regular sweat. This is full-body panic sweat. But you can't take your clothes off. Modesty rules are strict. Too much exposed skin is scandalous. And if you do shed a layer, you risk sunburn. Or worse, judgmental stares from Agnes, your nosy neighbor, with 6 kids and a suspiciously large collection of rosary beads. Insects thrive in this heat. Flies swarm your face. Mosquitoes bite every inch of exposed skin. Gnats fly up your nose while you're trying to breathe. If you've ever wondered what it feels like to be a mobile buffet for bugs, now you know. The heat doesn't care that you still have to work. You can't take a break. There's no siesta in the fields. You dig, you carry, you hoe, and you pray you don't pass out in the sun. If you do, someone might just step over you and keep plowing. They'll check on you later. Maybe. Your water supply is warm and questionable. We'll get to that in more detail soon. But just know that the combination of heat dehydration and medieval fashion is a recipe for heat stroke, except no one calls it that. You've just taken ill or suffered a spell. The treatment: lie down in the shade and drink warm beer, or don't. Just get up and keep working. Because the Lord still expects his share of the harvest. And oh, the harvest, that's a season in itself. If the weather's been kind, which it rarely is, you reap what little you grew. If not, you starve. There's no global food supply chain, no imports. If your village had a bad year, you're on your own. Starvation isn't an occasional threat, it's a seasonal one. And it's not just the temperature you deal with. There's flooding in the spring frost and the fall storms that knock your thatched roof off like a bad wig, and diseases that flourish in every season. Winter brings pneumonia. Summer brings dysentery. Spring gives you fungal infections from your soggy shoes and fall. That's mold season, everywhere. And through it all, you're still wearing the same damn tunic. You know what never changes? The itch. Fleas don't take holidays. Lice don't care about the heat. You scratch year-round like it's your second job. That one red patch on your leg? You name it. Talk to it. Bargain with it. It's practically family. So yeah, there's no climate control in medieval Europe. There's just surviving whatever mood the sky is in. Is it raining? Good luck keeping your fire lit. Is it snowing? Bundle up in your one blanket and pretend your toes still exist. Is it windy? That hole in your roof is about to double in size. And don't even start on storms. Lightning strikes barns. Thunder makes the cows bolt. Hail can destroy your entire crop. And when it does, you don't file an insurance claim. You fast pray and hope the priest doesn't say it was your fault for skipping Mass last week. Speaking of water, let's get into that now. Because the next time you turn on a tap, I want you to remember just how lucky you are not to be drinking medieval parasite soup. So you're sweating in your medieval wool outfit, choking on fly-infested air, and your body's crying out for one basic human need: water. Cold, clean, refreshing water. But this is 1325. And in the Middle Ages, water is basically a health hazard wrapped in false hope. Let's start with drinking it. You spot a stream trickling beside your village. Looks peaceful, clear, maybe even a little picturesque, like something off a fantasy postcard. You bend down, maybe cup your hands, maybe just stare longingly at it. But wait, upstream someone just dumped their chamber pot in it. Or a pig died in it. Or worse, both. Because here's the hard truth: your water source is also everyone's personal dumping ground. That beautiful, bubbling brook. It's basically a medieval flush system. The result: parasites, bacteria, things you can't see but will definitely feel later. This is why people in the Middle Ages drink beer, even children, not because it's fun, but because it's boiled. Brewing kills some of the microbes. So that weak flat ale is your safest bet for hydration. Doesn't matter if it's 6 a.m. or midnight. Beer is the default. Small beer, they call it. Low alcohol. High survival. You're not getting tipsy. You're just trying not to die. Wine is an option too, but only if you're wealthy. And even then, wine doesn't mean fancy. It means fermented grape sludge that may or may not give you a headache for 3 days. If you're poor, you might get to sniff wine once a year. Maybe. So that stream you were hoping to drink from? Yeah, no. That's the fast track to a medieval cleanse. The kind that ends with diarrhea fever and prayers to every saint you can remember. Now let's talk about bathing. You'd think, with all this sweating, itching, and general filth, people would be big fans of bathing, Makes sense, right? Wrong again. See, back in the day, many people believed that bathing was actually dangerous, that it opened your pores and let disease in, that scrubbing off your protective layer of grime would weaken your health. So instead of washing, most folks embrace their filth, like a crusty medieval armor. Now, communal bathhouses did exist in some towns. Think big wooden tubs, warm water, and a surprising amount of social interaction. At first, they were popular. People went to clean up, chat, and maybe enjoy a steamy soak. But over time, these bathhouses developed a reputation. Let's just say hygiene wasn't the only activity happening in there. Gossip scandal and medieval extracurriculars made the rounds. And pretty soon, the church stepped in and said enough. No more public naked parties. So the bathhouses closed, or went underground, literally, and personal bathing. It became rare, reserved for special occasions, illnesses, or royalty trying to impress foreign dignitaries. If you did want to bathe, here's the checklist. Fetch water from a well or stream. Haul it home. Boil it over a fire. Hope you have firewood. Pour it into a wooden tub that probably leaks. Hope nobody else used it first. Pray nobody else uses it after you. Even nobles didn't bathe often. Queen Isabella of Spain reportedly bragged about only bathing twice in her life, once when she was born, and once before her wedding, and she was royalty. For the average person, bathing happened once or twice a year. Maybe. You sponge yourself off now and then. Maybe wipe your hands. Maybe. Rainwater, sometimes collected in barrels. But birds poop in those. Insects breed in those. Slime forms. It's a microbial rave in there. So you might wash your face with it. Or you might use a rag and call it a day. And soap. If you have it, it's made from animal fat and ashes. It smells like disappointment and burns when it hits any open cuts, which you probably have plenty of. So what about staying clean? You don't. Not really. You mask odors with herbs, dried flowers, or strong-smelling oils if you can afford them. But most people just live in the stink. It's not considered gross. It's considered life. Everyone smells. You smell. Your neighbor smells. The priest smells. The air smells. But the body adapts. Eventually, you stop noticing. You smell like a campfire mixed with sweat and onions. Cool. That's just your medieval cologne. And washing your clothes, it's just as complicated. Water, heat, time, labor, all things you don't have to spare. So your tunic might get rinsed twice a year if you're lucky. Most of the time, you just beat the dirt out of it and hang it up to dry in the sun, assuming it's not raining, when it is good luck. Your damp wool tunic will trap every drop of moisture like a sponge of sadness. It never fully dries. It just gets less wet. So you go to sleep in your dirt. You wake up in your dirt. You wear it. You work in it. You eat with it. You pass it on. Cleanliness isn't next to godliness in medieval Europe. Cleanliness is suspicious. If someone smells too nice, they're either a noble or a witch. Now, say you ignored all that, drank. The bad water didn't boil, it skipped the beer, and now your stomach's doing gymnastics. You're sick, and you're going to need help. But don't get too hopeful, because next up is medicine. And in the Middle Ages, that's less about healing and more about surviving the cure. So, you drank the water, or maybe you stubbed your toe, or maybe a flea bit you weird, and now your lymph nodes feel like grapes stuffed with lava. Congratulations, you're sick. And in 1325, being sick isn't a minor inconvenience. It's a coin toss between recovery and death. Mostly death. Let's say you want to see a doctor. Well, don't, because actual trained physicians are few and far between. And even when you find one, you might regret it. Medicine in the Middle Ages isn't about understanding the body. It's about balancing your humors. That's right, humors. According to ancient theory, your health depends on the balance of four fluids in your body: blood phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Too much of one, you're doomed. And there are solutions. Let's say you've got a fever, the diagnosis too much blood. So the obvious answer: let's remove some. Enter bloodletting. A doctor, or more likely a barber, grabs a dull knife, slices your arm, and drains you like a leaky wineskin. Sometimes they use leeches. Sometimes they just stab you and hope for the best. No gloves, no antiseptic, just good old-fashioned guessing. And yes, barbers doubled as surgeons. You could get a shave, a haircut, and a full-on medical procedure in one sitting. The red and white striped barber pole, that's not a candy cane. It's symbolic of blood and bandages. You'll never unsee that. Feeling sad or anxious? That's clearly black bile. The fix: a laxative, maybe a steaming herbal purge, maybe some questionable mushrooms, or just prayer and a bucket nearby. And if you've got a rash, oh boy, the doctor might try to pop it, burn it, or apply a mixture of herbs and pig lard, or better yet, slap a pigeon carcass on it. I'm not joking. Dead animals were often used as salves. Don't ask why. No one knew then either. Now let's say you broke a bone. They'll try to set it no painkillers, of course. Just grit your teeth and scream into the nearest piece of cloth. If you're lucky, they'll wrap it with wooden splints and linen. If you're not, it gets infected. An infection: that's a death sentence, because there are no antibiotics, no penicillin, no antiseptics. You get a fever, your wound smells like rotting meat, and suddenly everyone's praying real hard. Bad air is blamed. Or maybe you didn't attend Mass last week. Or maybe you angered a saint. Whatever the reason, the solution involves leeches, herbs, confession, and watching your family build you a coffin. Got a toothache? That's the worst. Tooth decay is everywhere. No one brushes. No one flosses. You're chewing gritty bread and rotten roots with already broken enamel. So eventually, the pain becomes unbearable. You need an extraction. Back to the barber surgeon who grabs a pair of metal tongs and yanks it out of your skull. No numbing, no sympathy, no sterilization. You're holding onto the chair with white knuckles, screaming like a banshee and bleeding like a stuck pig. And if the root breaks, sorry, it stays in there. Have fun with that abscess. Now let's imagine something worse, something bigger, something contagious, like the plague. When the plague hits, and it will, people die in the streets. Swollen boils appear under their arms, their groin, their neck. Fever, vomiting, bleeding from places that should never bleed. And the treatment, well, people try flowers. They stuff herbs in their clothes to block the bad air. Some whip themselves in the streets to earn God's forgiveness. Others lock their doors and hope. Plague doctors. They're real. They wear those creepy bird masks filled with perfume, hoping the smell protects them. The long beak is basically medieval PPE, but they still die. Everyone does. Medicine is at best a gamble. At worst, slow torture. If you're sick, most people don't say, "Get well soon." They say, "Prepare your soul," because most treatments just make you worse. And yet through all this, there's one constant prayer, which brings us to the next major player in your daily medieval misery, the church. Because whether you're sick, dying, or just trying to eat your moldy bread, in peace religion is watching closely. So you've survived medieval medicine. Barely. You're stitched together with luck goat fat and possibly divine intervention. And you're hoping to rest, recover, and maybe just exist quietly for a bit. But this is the Middle Ages, and there's no such thing as just living. Because now it's time for God. And He's not just watching, He's micromanaging. Religion isn't just part of your life, in 1325. It is your life. It shapes your day, your week, your year, your afterlife, and even your dreams. The church is everywhere physically, socially, financially, and emotionally. It's not just a building. It's the courthouse, the school, the therapist's office, the cultural center, and yes, the tax collector. First thing in the morning, bells ringing, loud and constant. That's the call to prayer. Everyone stops. Everyone bows. You don't pray. That's a sin. Eat meat on a Friday, sin. Curse out loud, sin. Skip mass, big sin. Think about your neighbor's wife in a way that's not strictly brotherly. Sin, sin, sin. And all those sins, they add up. So you confess. Often and publicly. You kneel in front of your priest, pour out your secrets, and hope your penance is something mild like fasting or prayer. If not, it could involve whipping yourself, or crawling on your knees for hours, or donating what little food you have, because guilt is currency. And the church holds the bank. Tithing. That's non-negotiable. 10% of everything you earn, grow, or steal goes to the church. Wheat, eggs, wool, fork it over, even if your family's starving. Especially if your family's starving. Because withholding from the church isn't just theft. It's sacrilege. And sacrilege is how you end up flogged, or excommunicated, or worse. The church calendar controls your entire year. Holy days, saints' days, feasts, fasts, processions, pilgrimages. You live by their rhythm. You work around them. You suffer through them. Take Christmas, for example. Sounds joyful, right? Wrong. It's 39 days of fasting prayer and being told you're sinful by birth. Then one day of meat and mystery pies. Then it's back to Lent and another round of self-punishment. Joy is dangerous. Fun is suspicious. Pleasure is practically heresy, and questioning any of this unthinkable, because the church doesn't just guide your soul. It polices your thoughts. Heretics, people who think differently, are hunted publicly. If you say the wrong thing, you might be flogged, imprisoned, tortured, or executed. Say you believe the Bible should be read in your own language instead of Latin heresy. Say you think the priest is a little corrupt heresy. Say you're not totally sure purgatory makes sense. Super heresy. And what happens to heretics? Oh, just light execution, as in fire, burned at the stake, in public, with a crowd, sometimes with snacks, because executions aren't shameful, they're entertainment. And if you're a woman, you've got bonus ways to offend God. Speaking out, learning to read, looking a little too confident. You might be labeled a witch. Maybe your cow stopped giving milk. Maybe a neighbor's baby got sick. Maybe you stood up for yourself once. Doesn't matter. If the villagers are scared enough, you're getting thrown into a river. If you float, you're guilty and burned. If you sink, you're innocent and dead. So no matter who you are, you walk the line. You cross yourself constantly. You attend every mass. You say every prayer. You fear hell in graphic, bone-melting detail, because hell isn't vague in medieval Europe. It's a nightmare with a floor plan. You've been told what it looks like, what it smells like, what it sounds like. Screams, fire, demons, boiling blood, snakes eating people alive. Your childhood priest painted it in full color. And heaven, sure, it's mentioned, but nobody focuses on that. Hell is the blockbuster, and the church controls access to both. Even reading the Bible is off limits to regular people. It's written in Latin. Only the clergy can read it, which means they interpret it for you. They tell you what God says, what He wants, and what He'll do to you if you mess up. The result? a constant state of spiritual anxiety. You're never good enough, never pure enough, never safe. But still, you keep praying, you keep bowing, you keep giving, because what else can you do? If you don't, you risk everything: your soul, your family, your community, and your life. Religion is law. Religion is truth. Religion is survival. And the church? It's not just your guide. It's your judge, your landlord, your boss, your babysitter, and your only ticket to eternal salvation. No pressure. So, if you're planning to be different, to question, to explore, to challenge, you'd better not be a woman, because in the next chapter, we're going to see what medieval life looked like from her side of the hut. And spoiler alert, it's harder, bloodier, and 10 times more terrifying. So you've made it this far in medieval Europe. You've shoveled dung, dodged plague, prayed like your soul depends on it, which it does, and maybe, just maybe, survived a fever without bleeding out on your straw mat. But now let's switch perspectives. Because if you thought being a medieval man was rough, try being a woman. Welcome to hard mode. No health potions, no save points, and no second chances. From the moment a girl is born in the 1300s, her path is already carved out: marriage, childbirth, obedience, silence. If you're lucky, your family might love you. If you're really lucky, you might survive long enough to be called mother. But in most cases, your life isn't your own. It's a contract written by someone else. Let's start young. Girls aren't educated unless they're rich and shipped off to a convent. Reading and writing. That's for monks and noble boys. Most girls learn how to sew, cook, keep a house, and bear children. That's your education. You're taught how to be quiet, pious, and useful. Puberty. That's not just a phase. That's the green light. By 12, girls are often betrothed. By 14, they're married. By 15, many are pregnant. And no, you don't get a say. Your opinion on who you marry is about as relevant as the chicken's vote at a feast. Marriages are alliances based on land, livestock, and social standing, not affection, not compatibility, just economics in a bonnet. Once you're married, your body is no longer yours. It belongs to your husband, your family, and your community. Your job is to bear children, and as many as possible, because most of them won't make it. Infant mortality is sky high. Almost half of all children die before the age of 5. And for every baby you bring into the world, your own life is on the line. There is no prenatal care, no sterile tools, no skilled doctors. Midwives do what they can, but they're working in the dark, literally and figuratively. The floor is dirt, the air is bad, the tools are reused, an infection can start before the babies even out. And pain relief. That's for sinful women. You scream during childbirth. You're weak. You cry out. You're drawing demons. Some believe Eve's curse is the pain of childbirth, and you're meant to suffer it in full. No relief. Just blood, sweat, prayers, and the vague hope that both you and your baby survive. Many women don't. Some bleed out. Some catch fevers. Some break something inside and never heal. And if you do survive, you're up and working again almost immediately. No maternity leave. No quiet bonding time. You're back to cooking, fetching water, feeding animals, and trying to stop your toddlers from chewing on moldy straw. You breastfeed. You clean. You patch holes in the roof. You dry out last week's bread and make it into stew. You mend socks for a man who probably hasn't washed his feet since Pentecost. And if you don't have children, that's your fault too. Infertility is considered a woman's problem, even though medieval men aren't exactly models of reproductive health. If you can't conceive, you're viewed as cursed, broken, or worse, useless. If your husband gets bored or cruel, He might accuse you of being a witch. That word gets thrown around a lot. Too loud witch. Know how to make herbal remedies. Witch. Deliver a stillborn baby. Definitely a witch. Once you're accused, good luck clearing your name. They'll throw you in water. If you float, you're guilty. If you sink, you're innocent and dead. They'll look for a witch's mark, a mole, a birthmark, even a freckle. Find one. You're a servant of Satan. And if they burn you, it's not murder, it's mercy. They're cleansing your soul. Even women in power aren't safe. Noble women are treated like political pawns. Queens are married off to secure alliances. Their primary job, birth a male heir. If they don't, they're discarded. If they do, their sons are taken from them, raised by tutors and priests. Their influence ends with their womb. Even nuns, the supposed free women, live under suffocating rules. No speaking without permission. No ownership. No voice in church hierarchy. They spend their lives behind stone walls, married to God, and watched closely by male clergy. And remember, women can't be priests. They can't own land unless they're widows. They can't testify in court without a male relative. They can't read the Bible, and they sure as hell can't lead. If you're unmarried, you're suspicious. If you're widowed, you're vulnerable. If you're outspoken, you're dangerous. So you learn to smile quietly, to nod, to obey. But here's what they don't tell you. Behind all that oppression, there's resilience. Women don't just suffer. They resist, quietly, cleverly. They make medicines. They keep oral histories. They sing songs that pass down knowledge when writing is forbidden. They hold families together during famine. They become midwives, herbalists, caretakers, counselors. They fight for their children. They pray. They endure. And sometimes they outlive everyone. In a world built to break them, medieval women become the spine of the village. Not because they're allowed to, because they have to. And speaking of survival, just when you think life can't get any worse, violence shows up, not as an exception, but as the rule. All right, you've done your chores, survived, childbirth miraculously, dodged accusations of witchcraft, and even remembered to pay your tithes. You might be thinking, hey, maybe I've finally found a rhythm. Hold that thought, because here in the Middle Ages, violence isn't an occasional burst of chaos. It's woven into daily life like lice in your hair. It's not just a risk. It's practically a feature. Let's talk crime first. There's no police force, no 911, no neighborhood watch app. Law enforcement is basically your local Lord's armed goons or a guy with a stick yelling, "Stop, thief." If someone steals your goat, you don't get justice. You get a mob, some yelling, and maybe a crude trial involving people who last bathed during the last crusade. And crimes, they range from desperate to dumb. Stealing bread crime, poaching a rabbit on the Lord's land to feed your starving kid, big crime. Missing church on Sunday because your baby has a fever, still a crime, and probably a sin. Gossiping about a noble's wife, that'll get you fined, or whipped, or worse, dragged into court where your accuser is a man with a powdered wig and a god complex. Now the courtroom. Oh, the courtroom. You think it's about truth, about justice. It's about power. Evidence is optional. Lawyers don't exist. Trials are often just group accusations and vibes. You want to prove your innocence. You might be subjected to trial by ordeal. Here's how that works. Option 1, you plunge your hand into boiling water. If your skin heals cleanly in 3 days, you're innocent. If it blisters, you're guilty. Option 2, you carry a red-hot iron bar for 9 paces. Same healing rule applies. Which, spoiler alert, is a horrible system when your local healer uses pig fat as first aid. Option 3, they tie your hands and feet and toss you in a river. If you float, you're guilty because water rejects the sinful. If you sink, Congratulations, you're innocent and also dead. Sometimes they just skip all this and go straight to punishment. Here are your choices. Stocks public humiliation for hours, days, or even weeks. Rain sunbird droppings, you name it. All while kids throw cabbage at your face. Whipping usually. In the center of town, shirt off back out crowd cheering. A good flogging could lay you up for weeks or cost you your life. Branding, yes. A hot iron to the skin. A big old letter for everyone to see. Thief T, adulterer. A. Witch. Doesn't matter. You're already toast. Mutilation. Ear chopped off. Nose slit. Fingers gone. It's not just cruel, it's permanent advertising. You walk around town with a face that says, "Don't trust me whether you did the crime or not." Hanging for major crimes. Or minor ones if the judge felt spicy that day. No appeals, no mercy. Just to rope a crowd and the smell of boiled onions from the market next door. And if you're noble, you don't face any of this. You get house arrest. Or maybe a fine. Or maybe just a scolding. Because class isn't just social, it's legal armor. Now let's get personal. Domestic violence rampant. And totally legal. A man can beat his wife as long as the stick is no thicker than his thumb. Yes, that's where that horrible saying comes from. And no, she can't press charges. She belongs to him like a sheep or a shovel. Street fights, common. You look at someone the wrong way during a festival. That's a fist fight, or a knife fight, or a tavern brawl where someone loses a tooth, an eye, or both. Duels. Still a thing. Someone insults your honor. You grab your dullest sword and try not to bleed out in front of your village. And war is everywhere. You're always one tax hike or land dispute away from a full-blown skirmish. Lords fight other lords. Kings fight their cousins. And you get conscripted. Handed a pitchfork. Told to walk 20 miles in wet shoes. Then you line up with other terrified peasants, while a bunch of armored nobles gallop past you, on horses slicing bodies in half, like your background scenery in a nightmare. If your village gets raided, you're looted, burned, possibly worse. Violence is unpredictable, constant, and you're always one bad harvest or drunken noble away from becoming a corpse. And there's no trauma counseling, no therapy, no support groups. You just keep going. Keep tilling the fields with a bandaged hand. Keep feeding your family with a black eye. Keep praying that next week it'll be someone else's turn. But maybe you're thinking, surely there's some escape from all this misery. A vacation, perhaps. A bit of fun. Yes, there is. It's called festivals. But don't get too excited. Because even fun in the Middle Ages comes with fleas fire and fermented fish. You've survived the dirt disease, religious guilt, childbirth terror, and casual violence. And now, you're ready for something radical, something rare, something that might actually make you smile. It's festival season, and in medieval Europe, that means it's time to take your one tunic out for a spin. Eat food that hasn't been boiled beyond recognition, and if you're lucky, see a juggler throw knives at a drunk man while a bear dances in the background. Let's get into it. First off, the calendar is packed with holy days, dozens, even hundreds a year. Some of them are solemn, some are absolutely unhinged. The church approves of most of them, as long as you promise to confess afterward. So what does a medieval festival look like? It starts early. Church bells ring. Villagers gather in the square. Booths pop up with roasted meat, sour ale, and suspiciously old pies. People drink like tomorrow doesn't exist, which, given the mortality rate, is a valid approach. Music fills the air, if you can call it that. Picture bagpipes, drums made from animal skins, and someone with 4 teeth playing a lute like it owes him money. It's loud. It's chaotic. It's kind of beautiful. Dancing breaks out usually in circles, often barefoot, which means stubbed toes, twisted ankles, and at least one guy stepping in cow poop mid-twirl. Kids chase geese. Teens try to sneak kisses behind hay bales. Elders drink until they forget they have gout. The ale flows endlessly, and if you brought a coin or two, you might even buy honey cakes or a turnip carved to look like Satan. But that's not all. There are games. Want to test your strength? Swing a sledgehammer at a barrel of eels. Want to impress your crush? Enter a pig-chasing contest. First one to catch the greased pig gets a kiss, or tetanus. There's archery for the men, embroidery contests for the women, and sometimes, if you're really fancy jousting. Yes, real knights, on real horses, with real lances. They crash into each other at full speed while the crowd cheers, prays, and occasionally vomits. It's like NFL Sundays, except the ball is a guy's face. And if you're poor, don't worry. There's something for everyone. Bear baiting, dog fights, chicken tossing. Yes, that was a thing. And of course, public executions. Because nothing says community bonding like watching a thief get his hand chopped off before lunch. Executions aren't grim. They're events. People bring snacks, sing songs. Kids ask questions like, how many swings will it take? But not all festivals are blood and beer. Some are downright weird. Take the Feast of Fools. For one glorious day, peasants dress as nobles, priests wear animal masks, and the whole world turns upside down. The village idiot might be crowned king of misrule, and people parade through town, chanting nonsense and pretending to be goats. It's hilarious. It's dangerous. It's the only day you can mock the church without being burned alive. Then there's May Day, a spring celebration where everyone gets flirty. The maypole goes up, the flowers come out, and let's just say there's a sudden spike in babies born around February. Even the darkest events have flair. After a long winter or a particularly bad plague wave, villages might hold dancing rituals. Some are joyful. Some are eerie. Entire towns caught in what looked like a trance dancing until they collapse. Historians still debate whether it was mass hysteria poisoning or just raw emotional release. Sometimes the line between fun and fear disappears. Masked balls become moments of mystery. Fires burn all night. People whisper stories about ghosts, devils, and witches. And in the flickering candlelight, you forget you're in a world filled with suffering. You laugh. You sing. You remember what it feels like to be human. Then morning comes. The music stops. The ale runs dry. The square empties. And you go back to work with a hangover, a missing shoe, and a new appreciation for survival. Because in the Middle Ages, joy is brief, but it's real. And maybe that's the point. You take it when you can. In the middle of all the hardship, the hunger, the heartbreak, you dance while the world burns. Because tomorrow might be your last. But hey, what a story you'll leave behind. Speaking of which, let's pull back the curtain for one final act. We've been through mud and misery. We've seen the horror, felt the hunger, smelled things no modern person should ever smell. But how does this all end? What's the legacy? And what happened when the darkness began to lift? So here we are, 10 chapters, deep in mud plague, prayer and pig grease. We've walked in shoes made of straw and regret. We've suffered like saints and laughed like fools at fire-juggling peasants. And now, you're probably wondering, how did it end? How did humanity claw its way out of the long, dark night we now call the Middle Ages? The answer slowly, stubbornly, bloodily. Let's rewind a bit. The Middle Ages didn't have a hard start or finish line. Historians argue about when it ended, but one thing's for sure, it wasn't a clean break. It was more like a slow, unrolling scroll of change, inked in war, invention, curiosity, and yes, catastrophe. Let's start with the big one. The one everyone remembers. The Black Death. It tore through Europe in the mid-1300s like wildfire in a haystack. Somewhere between 75 and 200 million people died, nearly half the population in some regions. Entire villages vanished. Families, lineages, dynasties wiped out. But strangely, this apocalyptic horror started a transformation. With fewer people, there was more land, more food, more bargaining power for survivors. Peasants who used to beg for scraps could suddenly demand wages. Lords desperate for workers started to listen. The old systems began to crack. Next came rebellion. People rose up. Not all at once. Not always successfully. But enough to rattle the walls of power. The Peasants' Revolt in England, 1381. A full-blown uprising. Armed with pitchforks and fury, commoners marched on London. They wanted lower taxes, better conditions, dignity. They didn't get all that. But they sent a message. We're not just beasts in the field. We're people. And then there were the ideas. Books were rare during most of the Middle Ages, handwritten, expensive, and guarded like dragon treasure. But in the 15th century, a man named Gutenberg changed everything with a press. Suddenly, ideas could travel. Fast. Books spread across Europe. Bibles, poems, philosophies, heresies. People began to read and think and question. They started to believe that knowledge didn't belong only to the clergy or the crown. And then came the Renaissance. It didn't arrive like a sunrise, more like flickers of flame in the darkness. Italy first, then slowly outwards. Art flourished. Science sparked. Minds stretched. Humanity remembered it could create. People like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo started asking not just, how do I survive, but what does it mean to be human? And there were inventions. Glass windows, eyeglasses, better plows, mechanical clocks, even rudimentary hygiene. Cities began to rise, not just places of dirt and death, but of commerce and culture. And then came discovery. Ships left Europe. Maps were redrawn. The known world exploded outward. Yes, that brought new horrors, colonialism, slavery, conquest. But it also shattered the old borders of thought. It forced people to look outward and inward. And so, the medieval world didn't vanish in a puff of smoke. It evolved. Feudalism weakened. Kingdoms consolidated. Churches split. People questioned. And slowly, painfully, modernity began to take shape. But even today, the echo of that age lingers in our superstitions, our stories, our fairy tales, our fear of the dark, and our fascination with dragons' castles and cloaked figures in the fog. We still romanticize the chivalry, the knights, the honor. We still dread the plague, the torture, the fire. We still look at a crumbling stone wall or a candlelit cathedral and feel something ancient stir inside us. The Middle Ages were dirty, violent, cruel, but they were also resilient because through it all people endured. They loved, they laughed, they danced when they could, they buried their dead and planted again, they whispered prayers, they shared bread, they carried on. And they left behind more than disease and dust. They left behind roots, the roots of everything that came after. So, the next time you light a candle, read a book, brush your teeth, or flush a toilet, spare a thought for the villagers who didn't have that luxury. They lived hard, they died young. But without them, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be reading this, and the world wouldn't be the same.